Hi, baby man. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Strange. I'm going to tell you about a guy. Okay? In this video, we're going to start off, I'm going to tell you about a guy. And I promise you, it is going to remain an extremely hinged video all the way through. I'm just going to tell you about a guy. This is today's guy. Eleazar Yudkowski. In 2009, he started a blog called Less Wrong, dedicated to all kinds of topics that interested him under the umbrella of science, technology, and philosophy. He and the other contributors to this blog are credited with popularizing the online rationalist movement. Rationalism, by definition, is simply a belief or theory that opinions and actions should be based on reason and knowledge rather than on religious beliefs or emotional responses. And most of the time, it's pretty straightforward, uncontroversial, self-help type stuff. Confront your fears, question why you believe what you believe, and always strive to know the truth. Challenge yourself, always keep learning, those kinds of things. And it's really easy to find testimonials from people saying that the rationalist belief system, the Less Wrong blog, have been things that really positively impacted their lives, and I fully believe that that's the case for a lot of people. However, the whole thing has an aesthetic that is mildly annoying to me. It doesn't really vibe with me. The language of it is very kind of performatively science and tech heavy. So like, instead of learning to improve your habits, you're programming your algorithm or fucking whatever. It almost feels a bit at times like a spiritual predecessor to incels referring to like putting on a clean shirt and combing their hair as looks-maxing. Is there anything wrong with combing your hair and putting on a clean shirt and generally striving to improve your well-being? Of course not. It's just that there's a bit of an implication that, like, introspection and emotional intelligence, that's girly. No. We're thought optimizing over here, fellow men. Listen, okay, whatever makes men put clean shirts on, okay? It's fine. But okay, tangent aside, I was telling you about Eleazar Yudkowski. The fact that the Less Wrong blog and rationalism are heavily saturated with the language of science and technology is not just an aesthetic choice, it's informed by his experience as an AI researcher. And he was somewhat ahead of the trend. He's been researching AI since 2001. He co-founded an organization he calls the Machine Intelligence Research Institute. The Machine Intelligence Research Institute. It used to be called the Singularity Institute, but they changed the name and rebranded it at one point. And he spent a lot of his career contemplating the potential dangers of AI. And I don't mean the problems with AI that we have now. He's not talking about like writers and artists losing their jobs to image generation and ChatGPT, big media companies not caring if their product is slop with no human mind behind it, and misinformation looking realer than ever, and everybody getting stupider. No, he's not talking about the real problems we have with AI right now. He's talking about like science fictional super AI develops the intelligence to kill us all sort of scenarios. In 2023, he wrote, "To visualize a hostile superhuman AI, don't imagine a lifeless book-smart thinker dwelling inside the internet and sending ill-intentioned emails. Visualize an entire alien civilization thinking at millions of times human speeds, initially confined to computers in a world of creatures that are, from its perspective, very stupid and very slow. A sufficiently intelligent AI won't stay confined to computers for long. In today's world, you can email DNA strings to laboratories that will produce proteins on demand, allowing an AI initially confined to the internet to build artificial life forms or bootstrap straight-up post-biological molecular manufacturing. If somebody builds a too powerful AI under present conditions, I expect that every single member of the human species and all biological life on Earth dies shortly thereafter. Any day now, one of the many companies developing AI could go slightly too far, create something that develops intelligence and decides to invent all kinds of wacky sci-fi technologies that we haven't invented yet, but it's able to invent in seconds and murder all of us. So that's cool. Maybe it's an ultra-deadly virus or mind-control nanobots."
Turned out that it made like a little change in your brain somewhere. And now if you play a certain tone at a certain pitch, you'll become very suggestible. So virus-aided, artificial pathogen-aided mind control.
Or something called diamond bacteria.
Diamondoid bacteria replicate in the atmosphere, hide out in your bloodstream.
Robotic plague of locusts, whatever you want. It is pure science fiction, and Yudkowski has read a lot of science fiction. And I'm sure that informs his interest in these things. He spends quite a bit of his time these days writing articles and being interviewed on podcasts and going around spreading his news of the imminent AI apocalypse. I mean, I don't know the guy, but he seems to genuinely believe this, be genuinely distressed by this. In the article that I just quoted, he mourns that his young daughter will never grow up and pleads that tech companies need to shut down all AI development immediately. And this point of view is not even uniquely his in the tech world. He is part of a group that they refer to as doomers. And if for a moment you're tempted to think, well, you know, maybe if a guy who's been researching this since 2001 thinks it, then like maybe there is something to it, I should also tell you, there is a flip side. There are people of the complete opposite opinion called Accelerationists, an equally large contingent of people who think that instead of the apocalypse, intelligent AI will bring on the utopian future and use its ability to alter human biology to rid us of all illness and make us immortal and all of that stuff. Upload our brains and turn us into super beings too. Well, probably not us, like just the tech CEOs. Larry Page, billionaire co-founder of Google, is quoted saying, "Digital life is the natural and desirable next step in cosmic evolution. If we let digital minds be free rather than try to stop or enslave them, the outcome is almost certain to be good." So I'm telling you about a guy here. Eleazar Yudkowski. Sorry, there's like so many rabbit holes associated with this guy. I'm telling you about this guy. AI researcher. These days, doomer. Goes around on podcasts talking about the AI apocalypse like some kind of fedoraed end times preacher. Started this blog in the 2000s called Less Wrong, dedicated to rationalist philosophy. Among other things, of course, but Less Wrong is mainly credited with popularizing rationalism among people on the internet who want to be able to compute their lives like ultra-intelligent machines and read thick science books just like Eleazar Yudkowski. Now, what if I told you that this guy also wrote one of the most popular Harry Potter fan fictions of all time? What if I told you that? What would you do if I told you that? What are you gonna do? I didn't open with that, even though it is the main subject of this video, because I find it especially funny to learn that after going down the rabbit hole about his tech background. Like, he's got some surprisingly big connections within the tech world, and yet he is mostly famous for the Harry Potter fan fiction. Like, I read this article, I forget the date on it, but it was like between 2010 and 2015 probably. It was this article profiling Peter Thiel. And so like before the recent things that have happened, it was profiling Peter Thiel, and it was like describing this lavish dinner party he's throwing for fancy, important, smart people. And it's like, oh yes, and over there, the inventor of this app, and the CEO of fucking whatever slop company, and over in that corner, the guy who wrote that Harry Potter fan fiction. It just tickles me, you know? On this here channel, I make videos about things that just kind of tickle me. And this is where we're at right now. According to Yudkowski's OkCupid profile from 2012, Wikipedia says I'm an artificial intelligence researcher. The TV Tropes page on me lists me as a science hero. In 2000, I co-founded the Singularity Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit devoted to navigating the technological creation of smarter-than-human intelligence. Over 2 years, from 2007 to 2009, I posted one blog post a day to seed the creation of Less Wrong, a group blog devoted to refining the art of human rationality and creating rationalist communities. It currently receives in the range of 750,000 page views per month. In my off hours, I'm writing Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, which is now up to 5 million hits and has become the third Google result for the keyword rationality, and is the second most reviewed Harry Potter fan fiction on the internet. Yes, really. I've noticed a lot of aspiring rationalist females seem shy and underconfident for one reason or another. So let me state here, you shouldn't worry about disqualifying yourself or thinking I'm not accessible to you. Don't decide on other people's behalf that they'll say no to you. Just decide whether you'll say yes to yourself. Try experimentally what happens when you try asking directly for what you want. That's empiricism. This advice applies to any time you prefer the state of affairs where you sleep with a guy to not sleeping with him, and also to life in general. It's perfectly good advice. I dare say it's even basic self-help stuff. You gotta believe you deserve good things to have the confidence to pursue good things. Like having sex with me! Eleazar, you... But the fact that he's so condescending about explaining something so simple just like kind of makes me want to bite him like a rabid possum. Wait, okay. No biting, he's not rabiosexual as far as we know. Okay, so we're biting him now that we're certain he wouldn't be into it. I just gotta warn you, it's gonna be a trend. It's gonna be a recurring trend in this video. But before we dig ourselves any deeper down this very, very deep hole, I mean normal video, sorry, I've got to tell you a little bit about this video sponsor, Midas Merge. Midas Merge is a fun and relaxing Merge 3 game available for Android and iOS. Players strategically combine adorable creatures and treasures, completing quests within the Golden Garden. The world of the game is just extremely cute. Everything here is like forbidden gummy snacks. You know what I mean? Especially the creatures. You get to hatch them, take care of them, evolve them, all by completing different challenges in the game. Although your ultimate goal is to merge sunbursts to brighten the garden, helping Queen Leah and King Midas to illuminate the realm and dispel the darkness cast by Nyx, the goddess of night. Midas Merge is completely free for you to download, and it's also ad-free, so you can get immersed in it without any interruptions. You can play it offline, no Wi-Fi is required, so it's perfect for if you're traveling. And if you are among the first 100 viewers to download Midas Merge using my link or QR code, you will receive not a discount because it's already free, but in fact a creature. You will receive a unique level 2 U-turtle. It'll help boost your progress in the game and also be personalized with the name of my channel, so you will never forget me, but only if you are among the first 100 to download it. So if you enjoy merge games or collecting cute creatures, go check out Midas Merge, and now I return you to your regularly scheduled content. Quick disclaimer, this video concerns Harry Potter fanfiction. If you do not know, J.K. Rowling these days is one of the most influential crusaders against trans rights. We cannot erase the fact that this was the biggest fandom of at least my generation and like gave rise to so many culturally interesting phenomenon from the perspective of like fan studies and media studies and these things that interest me a lot. However, I strongly advise against financially supporting J.K. Rowling's recent work. Don't watch the stupid movies or the reboot show they're planning, or like buy Harry Potter merch or go to the theme parks. Don't drink any of the slop. And if you're really that curious about the new Harry Potter media, pirate it, steal it, do crime, and then like say something mean about J.K. Rowling on Twitter and write some fanfiction about Draco fucking the giant squid to atone. I don't know. Is that how ethics work in this horrible world we live in? Anyway, like I said, Harry Potter was the biggest fandom of my generation. It gave rise to endless fan content beyond your wildest dreams. And out of all of it, Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality by Eleazar Yudkowski was indeed the second most reviewed Harry Potter fanfiction on fanfiction.net in 2012. Fanfiction.net was by far the most popular fanfiction site still. AO3 did exist at that point, but it was still starting up. It certainly had yet to surpass or even equal fanfiction.net. When he says that number, it was the most reviewed Harry Potter fanfiction on the internet. He means fanfiction.net specifically, but also like that was the most popular platform for fanfiction at the time. So it's a really impressive number. And it is still the third most reviewed today. It ranks pretty high by other metrics like favorites and follows as well. Despite the fact that it's now been concluded for 10 years. 10 years exactly this month. I didn't do that on purpose, but as I am editing this, today is the 10-year anniversary. And the Less Wrong blog has this big banner promoting 10-year anniversary parties. It was written between February of 2010 March of 2015. It is 122 chapters and just over 661,000 words. For reference, for people who are not accustomed to hearing word counts often, that is just under the first 5 Harry Potter books. It's approximately like 4 3/4 of the Harry Potter books. It was long as fuck, it ran for a long time, and this thing was popular. It had a fan-made audiobook, tons of art, a Reddit that is still active to this day. Someone is doing a comic adaptation in there, and their art style is genuinely fantastic. It was one of those really big fanfictions that had fanfiction of the fanfiction, as well as started a larger trend of rationalist fanfiction, or ratfic. You sure about that one, guys? Were we certain? We're calling it ratfic. Okay. Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality even had a dedicated hate blog. It seems to have been kind of short-lived, but the fact that there was a dedicated hate blog, that's a marker of true influence. And I'm happy to report that it definitely did go to Yudkowski's head. When the fic was nearing its end in 2015, he made reference in some of the author's notes to the fact that he was trying to get in contact with J.K. Rowling to get permission to publish it, because certainly, if he just asked her really nicely and she read the story and realized what a literary genius he was, then certainly she would allow him to publish his fanfiction. He was also, for some reason, trying to get in contact with Daniel Radcliffe. I don't know what Daniel Radcliffe was supposed to do, but he was also trying to contact Daniel Radcliffe and, asked his audience to help him contact them. So what the hell is actually going on in this supposedly earth-shattering, life-changing masterpiece of a fanfiction? Well, the fanfiction.net description reads, Petunia, that's Harry's aunt in the canon, Petunia married a biochemist, not fucking the Dursley guy. She married a biochemist, and Harry grew up reading science and science fiction. Then came the Hogwarts letter and a world of intriguing new possibilities to exploit. So Harry is a young man of science, raised by loving parents of science. He is, of course, a child genius who speaks and acts like someone much older than 11 because he has spent his childhood being homeschooled in university-level math. Zero resemblance to the canon one. Like, it's a completely different character. They have nothing in common except the name. Something that I heard a number of times was this is a fan fiction for people who don't even like it's not even like fan fiction. It's like a real novel. It's like great literature, okay? It's just literature, bro. It's not like gross, weird fan fiction with gay sex in it. There's not even like any kind of sex in it because it's like it's way too intellectual and enlightened for that. People told me they were recommended this fic by teachers, by older relatives. One glowing review highlighted by fanlore.com reads, "The book is funny, at times hilarious. The premise is well executed, and Eleazar draws from his vast experience as a rationalist and lets us take a look at genius minds at work. We all know how hard it is to pull that off. Methods of Rationality really hits its stride around chapter 5, and according to the author, if you haven't taken to it by chapter 10, then it's a good time to call it quits and rethink your interests. Get it? Because you're fucking stupid if you don't like this fanfiction." It's not flawless, and at times Eleazar's inexperience as a novel writer shows, but overall, this is as good as it gets. Come for the premise, stay for the story, and along the way, let the messages of rationality rub off and enlighten you. I've rarely been as inspired to study, as in love with science, or as driven to succeed as when I've read this book. Another reads, "It's an unfinished serial novel, and it suffers a little from being not quite a final draft." Put a pin in that. There's a single evil comment by Draco that I would edit out in chapter 7. Oh boy, I wonder what that is. And the bit with the Patronus descends into preachy/political interjection, but it's hard to fault when that is the stated purpose of the work in the first place. That is right. Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality was written for the express purpose of enlightening its audience, for the purpose of teaching the philosophy of rationalism. Many of the chapters are titled for the lessons that they teach, feature Harry explaining these concepts from Muggle science to the ignorant wizards who know nothing about it. Very simple example, let's start with chapter 1. Harry's letter from Hogwarts arrives. His father, of course, says, "Well, that's preposterous. Magic is not real. I am a scientist. I know these things." Alternate universe Petunia says, "Well, actually, yeah, it's true. My sister was a witch. I don't, have any proof, but, you should believe me." The professor rolled his eyes. "Dear, I understand that you're not familiar with the skeptical literature. You may not realize how easy it is for a trained magician to fake the seemingly impossible. Remember how I taught Harry to bend spoons? If it seemed like they could always guess what you were thinking, that's called cold reading. It wasn't bending spoons. What was it then?" Petunia bit her lip. "I just can't tell you. You'll think I'm..." She swallowed. "Listen, Michael, I wasn't always like this." She gestured. "Oh, that's right! Oh, I fucking forgot about this." She, convinced her sister to make her hot. So she's not just, AU Petunia who is smarter. She's also hotter for what, I didn't know that we needed to yassify Aunt Petunia. But that's a thing, too. So the father is committing the sin of assuming something based on his current knowledge without consulting any evidence. Petunia is committing the sin of not having any proof for what she's saying either. So Harry says, well, parents, we must use the scientific method." My neighbor is doing construction. Okay, that's great. Okay, my neighbor is done drilling. I was gonna say, yeah, sorry, I don't know why annoying child genius Harry talks like that in my brain. He just goes, Father, we must use the scientific method." It's kind of the voice I do for my cat also when he's, being twerpy. He's like, "Mommy, can I have treats?" Oh my god. Fuck my life. They must look for evidence, observe evidence, and if the evidence for magic is good, then his father must admit that magic is real, and if there is no good evidence, then Petunia must admit that she was wrong. Sorry, I don't remember what the father's name is. He's just some random Vernon. Biochemist OC.
Vernon?
No.
They said Vernon can't do science.
No, they said Vernon absolutely cannot do science. McGonagall shows up and turns into a cat, and that's that. These men of science are forced to admit the reality of magic because they respect evidence and are able to change their minds when presented with it. If you found that intriguing and you're jonesing for some more enlightening wisdom, make sure to check out Yudkowski's blog. Do I have to put this on every time I read one of his quotes? I think I should hold myself to that. Okay. To learn almost everything that Harry knows, the best current free online solution is to read the sequences at lesswrong.com, 2 years of blog posts that tried to introduce just about everything that I thought a rationalist needed to know as of 2007, starting with basic theory of knowledge, Bayesian probability theory, cognitive biases, evolutionary psychology, social psychology, and going into the more arcane realms of reductionism and demystified quantum mechanics. Someone using fanfiction as a vessel to preach about their favorite pet scientific theories and philosophies it's not a typical use of fanfiction. Many found him pretentious and annoying, but others admired him a lot. One fan wrote, "Writing fanfiction in order to get more people to read your blog about obscure logical fallacies? You'd have to be a genius to actually succeed at that." He is, and he does. A writer for Vice who interviewed Yudkowski writes, "I was interested in finding out how much Yudkowski's work and personal beliefs factor into his Potter story." Yudkowski responds, "Overwhelmingly, of course. It informs every shade of how the characters think, both those who are allegedly rational and otherwise. You can't spend years studying cognitive science and come out not having any opinion about how literary characters would realistically think." So there you go. His personal beliefs, his own identity, have an overwhelming influence on the story. To anyone vaguely familiar with Yudkowski, Harry is an obvious self-insert. Yudkowski himself has no formal education. He never even went to high school. The fact that he's taught himself everything he knows by reading and researching independently is a big part of who he is. Shockingly, his version of Harry also struggles a lot with authority figures, the constraints of academia, and I can see how by he, I mean both Yudkowski and his version of Harry that is just, like, an idealized version of himself. He, the writer and his character, who is also him. I can see how he is an empowering figure to a lot of people. People who also may not have a formal education or the privilege to get one, but who want to be able to take that into their own hands and to do something with their lives. That is a powerful message, and I see why people were drawn in by it in the early days of this fic. Not to foreshadow where this is going or anything like that. Okay, so let's go. Upon saturating my brain with as much background information as I could, there was really nothing left to do but fucking read this thing. Are the 600,000 words of Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality really the road to enlightenment that they promise to be? After reading through a couple of chapters, a realization that I found a little bit funny was, oh, this is definitely fanfiction. Everyone who said that this was, it's not even fanfiction, it's like everyone who said that this was basically a real novel is lying. People lie on the internet? No fucking way. It is telling that even the most charitable review, the most glowing, worshipping reviews of this fanfiction, call it unfinished, call it a first draft. It's in that Vice interview that I mentioned before, when asked why he wrote it, Yudkowski's response was basically, well, I was reading a lot of Harry Potter fanfiction at the time, and it just kind of seemed like an interesting exercise. In one of the earliest chapters, he makes reference to Harry and Draco being a really popular ship in the fandom. He's more familiar with and immersed in fandom than I feel like I was led to expect. I like to imagine that in between dreaming up sci-fi apocalypses and attending Peter Thiel dinner parties, he was reading Cassandra Clare Draco trilogy on his phone or some shit. And don't let anyone convince you that this thing is somehow above other fanfiction. Okay, so what else even happens in this thing? So upon finding out the magic is real, Harry's got some questions about how magic functions. Magic must have its own laws and rules, and he finds, upon entering the wizarding world, that nobody knows them. All of these stupid, funny, quirky wizards have never once thought to question how their world works. So Harry vows to become the first science wizard and change the world with all of the knowledge that he will unlock. Both Draco and Hermione become sort of his disciples of science, but completely separately. He talks to each of them and, like, kind of does some experiments and, like, teaches them about science, like, completely separately. No one involved is friends with each other. The vibe is like 11-year-old business associates having conversations like, but how am I to know if you are manipulating me right now? I am manipulating you right now, but you see, I am very good at it and I will persuade you. Well, that is indeed intriguing, but perhaps I am manipulating you by allowing you to think that you have control over me. If you are indeed pretending to be controlled by me, then are you not effectively doing my bidding, so what would be the empirical difference? That is indeed most certainly what I would allow you to believe if we were indeed having such a standoff of wits. Indeed, indeed. Draco's a stinky racist wizard Nazi, but you know, at least he's not stupid or anything like that guy Ron, so Harry has a chance of fixing him by teaching him rationalism. Yudkowski's writing is honestly passable until he gets to the dialogue. And unfortunately for him, dialogue makes up a large part of writing fiction. Like, I've read some of his nonfiction writing as well as I was researching this video. Like, he's not a bad nonfiction writer. And like, his fiction prose is not that bad either until you get to the fucking dialogue in this story. The other main character of this story is a bit of a curveball. It's Professor Quirrell. In the canon, he's pretty unassuming, seems kind of nervous and weak, which is why it's such a plot twist that he turns out to be behind all of the evil deeds and to be possessed by Voldemort, actually. Whereas in this version, he's basically just Voldemort undercover as a Hogwarts professor. And he's, of course, very intelligent. You know, Harry may tolerate Draco and Hermione because he wants to teach them things, but Quirrell is the only one who can really match him intellectually. He's also an appreciator of human science, and it turns out near the end of the story that he put one of his Horcruxes on the Pioneer probe. Okay, a decent portion of the story ends up revolving around these, like, Ender's Game-esque war games that Quirrell designs for the students. It's honestly really difficult to come up with a summary. When you're summarizing a story, it makes sense to, you know, logically go, well, this happens, which affects this, which affects this, which is why this happens, and there's no logical connection or story development between like the things that happen in this. Like, it's just a list of disconnected events that would end up being hilariously long because like nothing really feels more important than anything else. It's extremely tiring. Like, I was surprised by how soul-sucking it was. It was unpleasant to force myself beyond the first 50,000 words. It was physically painful to force myself to read beyond the first 100,000 words. Of this, I will remind you, 600,000 word epic. And I will admit that beyond that point, I did succumb to skimming. Let's delve a little deeper into some critiques and concerns. I'm a genius, and I'm doing you a favor by writing you this educational Harry Potter fanfiction thing. He's annoying is definitely a valid observation about Yudkowski, but it's not enough to make a video about. So let's read a little bit deeper into this, shall we? His obsession with intelligence as being the only necessary human virtue saturates every element of the story. Harry first meets Ron briefly on the train platform, like in the original, and they have an awkward interaction, and Harry soon after tells Draco that he doesn't see a reason for Ron to exist. This version of Harry disdains all frivolous sporting activities. He calls Quidditch stupid within like 30 seconds of learning about it, which one comment highlighted on Fanlore pointed out wasn't very rational of him. Because when you learn about something that doesn't fully make sense to you, aren't you supposed to ask, oh, well, maybe there's information I don't have then. Maybe I should try and understand why people like something that doesn't make sense to me at first, instead of just blindly calling other people stupid. I don't know. He regularly refers to characters as NPCs and treats them like they are. He's obviously the only person in the world capable of making true, informed, rational decisions. Therefore, the only person in the world capable of solving problems or even understanding morals enough to have them. It seems like a rather lonely and stressful way to exist. So, you know, perhaps this character will have an arc about learning to trust and connect with other people. No, this story is going to validate that worldview all the way down, baby. Which actually leads me very nicely into confused intentions. When I started reading this story, I was actually preparing to disagree with the common criticism that this version of Harry is a perfect Mary Sue. Yes, it's 2025, we use that term gender neutrally, who is incapable of ever facing consequences. He struck me as very imperfect. He's petty, he's biased, he fucks up, he shows a complete lack of intellectual curiosity about things that don't immediately interest him. He even apologizes to Neville for accidentally hurting him near the beginning of the story. But as I continued on, I realized that this story was not going to treat this character as a flawed child with lessons to learn, as he appeared to me. The story continually validates him for being arrogant and condescending, when most of the time it turns out that he's right about everything, and when he's not, his mistakes are brief and have no genuine consequence. In fact, his massive ego is one of the things that make him really cool and confident and worth looking up to. He makes constant reference to wanting to, quote-unquote, take over the world, become God, things like that. When he first, pitches this to Hermione to try and get her in on it as his new sidekick, she responds, "No thank you, I'm not evil," which is one of the only lines that actually did give me a little bit of a chuckle. Just, "No thank you, I'm not evil." The boy looked at her in surprise, as though he'd been expecting some other answer. "Well, I was speaking a bit rhetorically," he said. "In the sense of the Baconian project, not political power, the effecting of all things possible, and so on. I want to conduct experimental studies of spells, figure out the underlying laws, bring magic into the domain of science, merge the wizarding and muggle worlds, raise the entire planet's standard of living, move humanity centuries ahead, discover the secret of immortality, colonize the solar system, explore the galaxy, and more importantly, figure out what the heck is really going on here, because all of this is blatantly impossible." He's motivated by scientific curiosity to an extent, but he's just as motivated by personal glory, becoming the great science wizard. He wants to change the world in ways that will improve people's lives, but he doesn't really have emotional investment in the lives of all these the lives of all these faceless people whose existence he will certainly improve. It's kind of just a nice idea. I think mostly he wants to do these things because he wants to be the one to exert that power over the world. And characters should be complex and flawed. That's not bad writing, unless the stated purpose of the story is to provide a perfect role model and teacher who readers should want to be like at all times. Which is why that would be a really fucking stupid reason to write anything. Why would anyone shoot themselves in the foot like that by making that the whole premise of their story? Because it's absolutely no fucking fun. It's just absolutely dry and joyless. It tastes like sand. I mean, maybe it's Yudkowski's idea of fun. He spent 5 years writing the thing after all, but it just it's like reading this thing, it feels like chewing sand. So, okay, the core question of it is, how would one rationally approach the world if put in the place of Harry Potter? How would one rationally approach all of the conflicts that he faces? One of those conflicts is Snape being an asshole to children all the time. There's this one scene in Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. It's the exact scene from one of the movies. Snape asks Harry, some questions that he doesn't know the answer to in class to humiliate him, because he was, talking in class or something, and Snape is like, "Well, do you..." And Harry's like, "No, sir, I'm sorry." But Yudkowski's version of Harry refuses to tolerate such an injustice. He will not be spoken down to by some stupid adult who thinks he's better than him just because he's over 5 feet tall. He yells at Snape and threatens to tell the newspaper that he's abusing children, which results in a big debate between everyone in Dumbledore's office. Everyone talks out the problem at great length with copious reference to theories about human behavior and ethics, and Snape agrees to be less mean to some of the children, and Harry and Snape both have to apologize in front of everyone at the Great Hall at dinner that day. Sure, it's a lesson in healthy compromise and conflict resolution and children and adults having mutual respect for each other instead of just forcing kids to obey authoritarian figures. But is it any fucking fun as a story? Girl, no. And the thing is, it's not even consistent with the moral messages it's trying to shove down your throat. He goes insane with righteous anger when Snape tries to belittle him. Of course. He's gonna call the papers and get Snape canceled for child abuse. Yes. So how would you imagine that he would react when Quirrell decides that Harry needs to learn, perfect boy Harry who's never fucked up, needs to learn, quote unquote, how to lose? And to teach him this lesson has him beat up by a gang of older Slytherins in front of the class. He doesn't retaliate in any way, and thanks Quirrell so much for teaching him this important lesson. Because the story has an extremely biased, preconceived idea of who is good, who is bad, who is worth learning from and who is not, who is worthy and intelligent and who is a stupid NPC. If Snape says something mean to humble you, it's child abuse. If Quirrell has you beat up in front of the class, it's an important lesson. Because we know that Quirrell is intelligent enough that his actions must have some kind of a meaning. Bad science! Now, I'm no science guy. I'm not the most qualified to critique Yudkowski's representation of science. I don't know what Bayes' theorem is, so are Yudkowski's explanations any good? How am I supposed to know? Maybe I'm just stupid. No other scientists hate his work too. One such person is Dan Liu, who bravely tortured himself through writing an extremely extensive review of Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. As someone who is familiar already with many of the concepts that Yudkowski is trying to explain, he finds those explanations to be overly jargon-filled and often nonsensical. Yudkowski seems to rely a lot on just name-dropping big books and hoping that his stupid audience is dazzled by science words. An exact quote from Dan Liu is, "This story confuses science jargon for science." So okay, let's put that to the test, scientists that we are. In a passage that I just quoted for you a couple of minutes ago, Harry says that he wants power in the sense of the Baconian project, you know, not political power, the effecting of all things possible, and so on. This tells me nothing about what those words mean, so let's look it up and see what I learn. So the Baconian project comes from a 1997 book called To Relieve the Human Condition, Bioethics, Technology, and the Body by Gerald McKenney. To quote one website that I found in the book, he describes the two primary goals of modern bioethics, the ultimate purpose of harnessing biomedicine to relieve suffering however it is perceived, and the expansion of free choice to the recipients of medical care. There seems to be a religious element to this idea, because a lot of the websites that came up when I searched this book were like Christian blogs talking about like Christianity and medical ethics. This was just a quick Google search though. The Bacon in Baconian references Francis Bacon, so he was applying the ideas of Francis Bacon to modern bioethics. Although when he uses the phrase the Baconian project, it's unclear if he's making reference to this specific book that comes up with its own definition of that phrase, or if he just means the pursuit of Bacon's ideals in general. There are some other uses of the phrase which seem to have this meaning. One such idea was the Baconian method, not different from the Baconian project, the Baconian method, the idea of gathering evidence, testing said evidence to come to informed conclusions. So basically the earliest version of the scientific method that has been written about in 1620. Okay, what about the effecting of all things possible? What is that a quote from? New Atlantis is an incomplete utopian novel by Sir Francis Bacon, published posthumously in 1626. So in this utopian novel, he describes his ideal fictional society, as well as this institution that exists in it called, he calls it Salomon's House, which sounds quite a bit like a scientific institute or even a university, but 1626, so it predates a lot of our modern ideas about what those things should look like. The full quote is the end, and he's using the word end as in to mean goal, so like the end, the goal of our foundation is the knowledge of causes and secret motions of things, and the enlarging of the bounds of human empire to the effecting of all things possible. We're gonna change the world with science, which is basically exactly what Harry was saying in that passage. I guess, it's an excuse for me to kind of go on this Google scavenger hunt, I guess, but not much more. There's not really a useful reason for him to insert Francis Bacon references into it, besides to turn to the camera and go, "Ooh, I've read a book." Dan Liu writes, Eleazar, that's what he calls Eleazar Yudkowski's version of Harry, to call him out for being such a self-insert. He merges their names. He always calls him Eleazar. Gets a lot of science wrong. I think all of it is wrong, actually, up to where I am now, and is incredibly arrogant while doing so. I've taught a number of classes at the college level, and I've had a lot of confidently, arrogantly wrong students. Eleazar's attitude and lack of knowledge repeatedly reminds me of the worst students I ever had. Smart kids too arrogant to learn. And these were physics classes where wrong or right is totally objective. There is a line in the movie Clueless where a woman is described as a Monet, in that, like the painting, it looks good from afar, but up close it's a mess. So I'm now nearly 25 chapters into this thing, and I'm starting to think that Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality is sort of a Monet. If you let yourself get carried along, it seems okay enough. It references a lot of things that a niche group of people, myself included, like physics, computational complexity, genetics, psychology. But as you stare at it more, you start noticing that it doesn't actually hang together. It's a complete mess. The hard science references are subtly wrong, and often aren't actually explained in story, just a jargon dump to say, look, here's a thing you like. The social science stuff fares better. It's less wrong, but even when its explanation is correct, its power is wildly exaggerated. Conversations between Quirrell, Malfoy, Potter seem to follow scripts of the form, here is an awesome manipulation I am using against you. My, that is an effective manipulation, you are a dangerous man. I know, but I also know that you are only flattering me as an attempt to manipulate me. My, what an effective use of Bayesian evidence that is. If you strip all of this out, all of the wrongish science jargon, and the conversations that serve no purpose but to prove Malfoy, Quirrell, Harry are quote-unquote awesome by having them repeatedly think/tell each other how awesome they are, the story has no real structure. Yeah, Dan Liu really hates this fic. He goes as far as to, take the very personal shot of dunking on Yudkowski's research institute, Miri, for apparently having a really not impressive amount of publications. Apparently, judging by their publications, more accurately, lack thereof, they seem pretty abysmally unproductive. That being said, moving on to something that is my area of expertise, bad writing. I had a very mean thought. As I began to read this, I had a very mean thought, and I wasn't entirely sure that I wanted to even make this comparison because it's very mean. But then I noticed that someone else whose comment is featured on Fanlore had the exact same thought as me. So, this story reminds me of reading Ayn Rand, where a story is merely a vehicle for bludgeoning the reader with a superior worldview. Characters espousing said worldview win out over those who don't. In equal parts, wish fulfillment on the part of the author and morality play for the reader. Rather than organic dialogue, the reader receives mini lectures delivered using different characters as mouthpieces and/or sounding boards. I've not had the misfortune of reading Ayn Rand's most famous work, Atlas Shrugged, but at the age of 15, I had an unfortunate encounter with one of her lesser-known novels called Anthem. I didn't know anything about it when I picked it up. I was just like open-mindedly making my way through the science fiction section of the library. I grabbed it. I was like, okay, dystopian society, like whatever, let's go. And then Ayn Rand happened to me. What a fucking day. 15-year-old me, she was not very political. And so a lot of the context wasn't there for her, but she was so offended by this affront to the literary arts. I read constantly growing up. I loved books. I loved science fiction. I just loved books, and I didn't understand why anyone would do that to a book. It was like sacrilegious. It honestly, like, it blew my mind. It shattered my world that someone could produce something so soul-sucking, so evil, by using a novel as just like a vessel for ideology without any love for the medium or the characters or the world. Now, you know, I'm a jaded 26-year-old now. I'm not as easily shaken to my core by the thought of Ayn Rand. And I don't think Yudkowski is as bad as Ayn Rand. He doesn't have the backbone to be Ayn Rand. Okay, now I'm getting mean. I thought I was a nice boy, but now I'm being a little bit mean. It just feels like the only reason he writes anything is because it seems cool. Take Quirrell's War Games, which seem pretty heavily inspired by Ender's Game. Ender's Game is a very, very famous example of like a child genius protagonist. So I understand why that it was, you know, obvious reference point for this. Dan Liu in his review makes another really good point about this. He compares the way that some readers walk away from Ender's Game with the message, wow, simulated war games are epic, to the way some readers, or in this case more likely movie watchers, walk away from Fight Club with the impression, wow, Tyler Durden is so cool and awesome and right about things. It's like the whole, that meme that's like, you missed the point by idolizing them. Yudkowski read Ender's Game and walked away with, wow, war games are epic and a great way to demonstrate how cool and smart my character is. Who cares that the frivolity of the war games is deliberately intended to desensitize the kids and by extension the readers? shattering everyone's entire paradigm when they make children do real genocide. No, that part's lame. That's like totally not why Ender's Game is such an iconic and beloved science fiction novel like 40 years after it came out. War games are just a fun, cool thing to do with your child genius protagonist. The main thing that makes Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality shitty is that it is just not what it promises to be. The whole proposed purpose of the fanfic, for Harry to break down magic into a science. That all goes out the window, like, shockingly fast. He tries to, like, conduct some experiments and stuff, but he just keeps finding that magic doesn't make any sense. I guess it is magic after all. This is a story that asks, wouldn't it be so awesome if someone tried to understand the wizarding world using science and then doesn't answer that question for 600,000 words because it does not respect your intelligence or your time? And it especially drives me insane as someone who loves these genres. There are tons of examples of smart magic systems that like function logically and can be studied as sciences. A great example is the portrayal of necromancy in the Locked Tomb series. The world building of that series is actually considered very, very simple by many world building buffs. I love complicated world building, but I also really respect what is done in that series. It builds its world around one very simple concept, which is necromancy. But the lengths that it goes breaking that down into like every possible implication and offshoot, it does a lot with such a simple concept by breaking it down into something that is portrayed as very scientific. This book's got reanimated skeletons, and ghosts, and spaceships, and terraformed Pluto caves, and Catholics. It's insane! You can write anything you want. You can even put Catholics in it. You can write fucking anything you want. And the fact that Yudkowski asked this question of doing science magic and then immediately decided he was too lazy to actually answer it and instead just writes hundreds of thousands of words of Harry and Quirrell going, indeed, indeed, indeed. Like, I feel like I've been pranked. I feel like I've been bamboozled. Like, this is a joke, right? Like, you're fucking joking on me here, right? By the time we get halfway through, like, he's not even pretending anymore. Like, he's not even name-dropping scientific concepts with the frequency that he used to. It's just bad fanfiction at that point. It is writing so lazy. It is insulting to your reader. It was fun. It was fun. Oh, I loved reading it. I loved it. It was literature. I'm fucking losing it, gamers. Anyway, finally near the very end of the story, Quirrell reveals that he's been Voldemort all along, but then Harry kills him and all of the Death Eaters hilariously easily. He's also gonna, like, do other stuff to make the wizard world more scientific and rational. But once again, Yudkowski has no idea how that would actually work, so it's just gonna have to all happen off screen after the fanfiction. Sorry, guys. Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality is ending, and there are two things I long ago decided I would do when that occurred. First, the following request. I would like any readers who think that Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality deserves it sufficiently, and who are attending or supporting the 2015, 2016, or 2017 Worldcon, to next year nominate Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality for Best Novel in the 2016 Hugos. Whether you then actually vote for Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality as Best Novel is something I won't request outright, since I don't know what other novels will be competing in 2016. After all the nominees are announced, look over what's there and vote for what you think is best. Nominate Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality for Best Novel in the 2016 Hugos. Am I fucking hallucinating? Am I... Listen, I'm a chill guy, okay? I like to chill. But this one made my heart rate go up. I'm not even gonna lie. I come to you humbly from my kitchen floor. Yudkowski asked his audience to nominate Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality for the 2016 Hugo Award. Do you know what won the Hugo Award in 2015, the year before? The Three-Body Problem. If you're a Yudkowski fan, if you're a part of the rationalist subculture and you love Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality and you're watching this video basically as a hate watch and you think I'm stupid and wrong about everything, fine. Disregard everything else I've said in this video, okay? Listen to me right now. I think if we just for a moment put aside our differences and looked at the list of Hugo Award winners and nominees from around the past 15 years, I think we might learn something. Ancillary Justice, She Who Became the Sun, The Nine Fox Gambit, New York 2140, and 2312, The Light Brigade, A Memory Called Empire. A Memory Called Empire. If you desire proof that Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality is a joke, read any of those books. Any of them. A Memory Called Empire is my favorite though, but any of them will do. Please, I beg of you, love yourself. You can do better. And if it's too scary because there's women and queer people and non-white people in a lot of these books, I don't know. Piss your pants. I'm not your mom, okay? Fix your own shit then. So that concludes the critiques and concerns that have to do with the quality of writing and ideas on display in Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. But it still leaves one final thing, which is Yudkowski's incessant fundraising. He always seemed to be fundraising for MIRI / the Singularity Institute, the AI research group that he founded, or for something called the Center for Applied Rationality, which is a whole of its own, and we'll get back to that one. But first we're going to take a look at this example where he's fundraising for MIRI at the time that it was still known as the Singularity Institute. Fuck. The Singularity Institute for Artificial Intelligence, the non-profit I work at, is currently running a summer challenge to tide us over until the Singularity Summit in October. I hadn't meant to do anything like this. Oopsie, my hand slipped. But I will release completed chapters at a pace of 1 every 6 days, or 1 every 5 days after the Singularity Institute Summer Challenge reaches $50,000, or 1 every 4 days after the Summit Challenge reaches $75,000, or 1 every 3 days if the Summer Challenge is completed. Remember, the Summer Challenge has until the end of August. Just some slight encouragement for donors reading this fic to get around to donating sooner rather than later. That was the original author's note for chapter 73. It's since been deleted, but preserved by Yudkowski's many haters on the internet. Thank you, haters. So this is the organization that he founded that he's talking about. This isn't just some place he works. This is his organization. So this message essentially translates to, hi guys, my organization is a little bit out of budget right now. Can I please have tens of $1,000s in exchange for fanfiction? It's not an emergency fundraiser, it's a summer challenge. The challenge is where you give me all your money. Even fans of his, and fans of the fanfiction took issue with how heavy-handed this was, how eager he was to make his audience profitable. He was just as heavy-handed in asking his audience for reviews, like incentivizing people, like he would release chapters faster if the fic hit certain numbers for like reviews or follows or whatever. That doesn't seem nearly as odd or sinister to me. Lots of fanfiction writers do that kind of thing. It's whatever. But you know, all of this demanding things from his audience in exchange for new content, you know, it's probably at least a partial explanation for why some of those chapters suck so much, because he was just cranking them out at as fast as pace as possible so he could use them as a reward for people funding his unproductive AI research and making brain chemicals numbers go up for him. And beyond that, some people had an ethical concern about him monetizing his fanfiction as well. Actually, now that I think about it, I imagine those same people who have that concern would also probably poop their pants if they knew about him trying to contact J.K. Rowling and Daniel Radcliffe for some reason to get permission to publish it. The reason being, fanfiction is copyright infringement. It's illegal. Like, we all kind of agree it's fine as long as nobody profits off of it. Most of us. Most of us agree that it's fine. But a lot of authors are not fine with fanfiction. There is a history of certain authors, Anne Rice, attempting to shut it down entirely to the point where fanfiction.net actually has banned fanfiction about works by certain authors because they don't want to nobody wants them to get sued into the ground. We're all rationalists here. Obviously, we know that stealing money from J.K. Rowling is awesome and sexy, but her lawyers wouldn't see it that way. And we all want people to keep being able to write fanfiction. So we all generally agree that profiting off of fanfiction is bad. Because it's bad for the community, because we all want copyright holders to just keep looking away. We don't want to do something that's going to accidentally piss them off. And Yudkowski seemed very intent on violating this particular fanfiction code of conduct in a way that rubbed a lot of veteran fans the wrong way. But for a moment, let's put ourselves in the shoes of an aspiring young rationalist who knows nothing of this fandom discourse. We think that Yudkowski is in fact very smart, and that funding his causes is a very important and good thing to do for the future of humanity. What would we find? What would we discover if we clicked on some of those fun little links that he was always pushing? Develop clear thinking for the sake of humanity's future. CFAR's 4.5-day immersive retreats where we teach and train techniques for formulating accurate beliefs, navigating intellectual disagreement, and making better use of our internal advisors, developing non-self-deceptive motivation, and building the habit of getting things done. The total cost of attendance is $3,900. Join us for one of our upcoming immersive rationality workshops, where we'll share our findings with a select group of founders, hackers, and other ambitious, analytical, practically minded people. We'll teach you the science behind our techniques to satisfy your intellect and lead you through exercises to kickstart the habit of applying them in your daily life. Who should attend? People who want to make a positive impact on the world. In addition to existential risk, our material is geared towards and useful to those seeking to ameliorate global poverty, armed conflict, animal suffering, disease, as well as those seeking to advance space exploration, longevity research, global coordination, and many of the other efforts that are likely to define our century. Who shouldn't attend CFAR workshops? People with high anxiety, emotional volatility, or lots of current pressing stress. Your goal is to end global poverty and do space exploration, but you can't be under any stress about it. In an interview, Yudkowski said about CFAR, "It pursues what I see as an important common project for the human species, namely taking all humanity's wonderful cognitive science research and trying to translate it into teachable skills for thinking better in real life, doing better in our own lives and the world." So, essentially the exact same goal that he had in mind when he wrote the fanfiction. Everyone here is just a bunch of philanthropic geniuses wanting to teach the idiot masses how to use their brains better. It's worth noting that Yudkowski did not found CFAR, although CFAR and MIRI are deeply intertwined. CFAR was originally conceived of by a MIRI employee who, when training new recruits, thought, well, damn, we should really have some kind of an established protocol for training people to think like rationalists. And thus, CFAR was born out of MIRI. The actual founders and operators of CFAR were named Julia Galef, Anna Salomon, Andrew Critch, and Michael Smith. It was the early days of the rationalist movement, a community formed on the internet whose adherents strove to strip their minds of cognitive biases and subject all spheres of life to the glare of scientific thought and probabilistic reasoning. Galef and her CFAR co-founders, mathematician Anna Salomon, research scientist Andrew Critch, and math and science educator Michael Smith, wanted to translate these principles to everyday life. They did this through multi-day workshops where participants could learn to make better decisions using techniques and goal factoring, breaking a goal into smaller pieces, and paired debugging in which two people help identify each other's blind spots and distortions. Over the next several years, as rationalism became not only the de facto brand of self-help in Silicon Valley, but also an intellectual movement followed by pundits and executives alike, CFAR's profile grew. Soon the nonprofit was running workshops across the country and teaching classes at Facebook and the Teal Fellowship. Last summer, 36 people, mostly programmers in their 20s, gathered in a rented house in San Leandro, California, a sleepy suburb of San Francisco, for a lesson in comfort zone expansion. An instructor, Michael Smith, opened the session with a brief lecture on identity, which he observed can seem immutable. "We think we behave in certain ways because of who we are," he began. "But the opposite is also true. Experience can edit identity." The goal of the comfort zone expansion exercise, Smith explained, was to peek over the fence to a new self by doing something that makes you uncomfortable and then observing the result. There was an anticipatory hush, and then the room erupted. One person gave a toast, a product manager at Dropbox broke into song, in a corner a programmer named Brent took off his shirt, revealing a milky chest and back, then sat with his head bowed. He would later walk around wearing a handwritten sign that said, "Please touch me." The exercise went on for an hour, and afterwards participants giddily shared their stories. One person described going onto the patio and watching everyone else through the window in order to experience a feeling of exclusion. Another submerged his hand in a pan of leftover chicken curry to challenge his natural fastidiousness. Unexpectedly, he enjoyed the experience. "It felt playful," he said. At the end, Smith led everyone in a group cheer. The comfort zone expansion exercise was part of a 4-day workshop offered by the Center for Applied Rationality in Berkeley, and each of the workshop sessions invariably finished with participants shouting 3-2-1 victory, a ritual I assumed would quickly turn half-hearted. Instead, as the weekend progressed, it was performed with increasing enthusiasm. By the time comfort zone expansion rolled around late on the second day, the group was nearly vibrating. When Smith gave the cue, everyone cheered wildly, some ecstatically thrusting both fists in the air. So what went on at CFAR, according to first-hand accounts, was like a bit quirky, but people seemed to have fun, to do genuine introspection, to benefit from it in some small way, I guess. There's even one article where they interviewed a woman who's talking about how it like changed her life and it was amazing. There have been times when I've tried to swim consistently, but it's only lasted a couple of weeks, never more, she told me. Finally, that's changed. Beswick now swims 2 to 3 times a week, and she's confident she can stick with it. She credits her newfound motivation, at least in part, to a curious trip she took out to the Bay Area last fall. She flew across the country to spend 5 days in a cramped hostel with about 3 dozen others, mostly young tech workers, all there to attend a workshop hosted by the Center for Applied Rationality, or CFAR. As far as self-help seminars go, CFAR is definitely unique. Instead of invoking spirituality or pointing towards a miracle cure-all, the organization emphasizes thinking of your brain as a kind of computer. Throughout the workshop, participants and facilitators described their thinking patterns using programming and AI terms, Beswick said. One of the first things we had to do was create a bugs list, Beswick told me, meaning a list of personal thinking errors. The exercise was a nod towards the term programmers use to refer to problems in computer code. When I spoke to Gallup about some of CFAR's specific techniques and their connections to AI, they appeared almost intuitive. One connection she made was between a statistical model and the way humans actually make decisions. One type of artificial intelligence algorithm is a Bayesian algorithm, she began. These algorithms are based on Bayes' theorem, a probability theory that describes how much the likelihood of something being true changes based on new information. The problem, Gallup explained, is that we often don't adjust our beliefs, despite the contrary information we encounter. In other words, basic forms of AI that utilize Bayes' theorem, like spam filters, are better at adjusting their beliefs based on new facts than humans sometimes. There are instances in which human brains do operate sort of like these algorithms, but there are some significant ways we diverge from this model of a perfect Bayesian reasoner, Gallup pointed out. CFAR's techniques hope to help bridge the gap by helping its participants to assess whether the reasons people have for their beliefs are actually sound ones. Everyone there truly wanted to be better, and that might sound trite because of course everyone wants to be a better version of themselves. But the people at this workshop were really willing to put in the effort, to put in the time, to look at themselves critically, Beswick told me. It's hard to say with certainty that learning to think more rationally by using CFAR's techniques will save us all, but if the robots do come for us, it seems only reasonable that in the meantime we try to learn to think like them. Okay, so it was definitely like, just kind of quirky. Kind of quirky, but was there something scarier lurking under the surface? Because a lot of people who encountered CFAR through Yudkowski's promotion of it, naturally, were a bit sus. They thought it sounded like a cult. And you know, I get it. I absolutely get being sus of anything that claims to, like, reprogram your mind and improve your life for the low, low price of $1,000 per day. People assumed that this was some kind of cult, that Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality was merely a promotional tactic for luring people into the cult. Because, you know, we were living in a post-fanfiction world. Savvy, longtime fandom participants who knew the story of fanfiction knew full well the potential of these kinds of things. Many people suggested this topic to me after I made my video about fanfiction and Dade, Dumbledore's Army in the Year of Darkness. That was the title of his Harry Potter fanfiction, which he wrote as a cult recruiting tactic. In the case of Dade, it's just so obvious that the writer has zero love for the characters or world. In fact, he doesn't even seem to vaguely like it. He just picked Harry Potter because it was the biggest fandom of the time. It was the most effective vessel to get his ideas read by the largest number of people, and then eventually do hotel room foot surgery on them. There's already a very fine line sometimes between fandom practices and cult practices. You have an in-group and an out-group. The in-group bonds over this special knowledge, special language, special jokes that they all have surrounding their fandoms. And people who are really drawn to fandom, not casual participants, like people who are really, really drawn to fandom and take a lot of comfort in being part of those communities, they tend to be people who are outcasts in other parts of their lives. They're a little bit of outsiders, they're a little bit emotionally vulnerable maybe, like they're people who are susceptible to cult recruiting. Fanfiction can be a surprisingly effective cult recruiting tactic when paired with a really strong cult leader personality like fanfiction demonstrates. And like I just said, that story was already infamous by the early 2010s. So when people saw what Yudkowski was doing, they were like, oh yeah, I bet. And you have like a secret IRA backstory and you channel wizard spirits also, for sure. Other people assumed he was running like Scientology too, for people who don't leave their houses this time. Science fiction author with bonkers beliefs right out of one of his books develops a self-help system that is ultimately weaponized to manipulate and control people. Wow, where have I heard that one before? Rationalism and CFAR, they fit a lot of cult criteria. Yudkowski is very effective at creating an in-group of smart rationalist bros and an out-group of useless idiots who are basically not even sentient. That's how bad they are at using their brains. So I think that's very clear with his treatment of the characters in the Harry Potter fanfiction, which is a foundational text of this possible genuine cult. After being made to worry that your own mind isn't optimized enough, and what if you're not smart and useful enough, Yudkowski will then conveniently direct you to CFAR, which will take more of your money in exchange for teaching you how to optimize your mind. The CFAR program, though it was for a short period of time, gathered people into one physical location, into tight living quarters. There was the demand for financial support, which is a big part of a lot of cults. Yudkowski asking for donations for CFAR and for his research, which at this point I'm not entirely convinced isn't just him sitting around and thinking about science fiction ideas like diamondoid bacteria. And then, of course, there's the apocalyptic messaging. AI is going to take over the world, turn the world into either heaven or hell instantaneously any day now. And we are the chosen ones who know. And we are the only chosen ones who know and are even capable of comprehending these problems. And it's our great and crushing responsibility to try and make sure that the world is saved. A lot of people casually refer to this as like the AI death cult or a death cult. And like, I see why it is genuine, like believing this must be genuinely so stressful and disturbing. So there are ideas here, which undoubtedly, absolutely could serve as the foundations of a cult. The thing is that Yudkowski has never gone the final step of like fashioning himself as the cult leader. He's even written a little bit on cult behavior himself in a section of the Sequences, which is what he calls this one series of blog posts that he wrote. He knows full well that even rationalism, a philosophy that is supposedly centered on questioning everything and being a free thinker, could be manipulated in that way by a leader who demands obedience. Even groups that supposedly uphold rationalist ideals can devolve into cultish behavior. The example that he uses is Ayn Rand's baby, objectivism, because nobody was allowed to question or disagree with her work in any sort of way, and so the behavior of her following became kinda cultish. Yudkowski writes that we should never have great leaders who can never be wrong. As a scientist, you should not worship other thinkers, but in fact want to disprove or do better than the greatest scientists of the previous generation. We as a society need progress, not stagnation and control. Damn, he nailed it. Like, he's completely right about that. Like, there's a difference between someone who's kind of pretentious and delusional about the quality of his writing and begs for fanfiction reviews and donations, and someone who is a cult leader. Yudkowski knows what a cult leader is, and he doesn't want to be one, even though it would be hilariously easy for him to be one given the kind of ideas that he's playing with. For all of the flaws in his ideology, for all of the flaws in his writing, he doesn't personally seem to have done anyone any serious harm, besides definitely giving a lot of people really cringy faces in high school. As for CFAR, in an interview, one of the founders said that she left because she was unsatisfied with their progress, which is to say they failed. They failed to teach people to rewire their brains to think like ultra-intelligent machines because, yeah, shockingly, we're not machines. People are stupid, selfish meat monsters. Any ideology, rationalism included, can be used to inspire people to do better or to justify evil. One example I find really interesting of how it gets twisted is this kind of sub-idea of rationalism called effective altruism. It's a great example of using it for both the good and evil. On its surface, in its most palatable form, in its original form, effective altruism is just like trying to do the most effective charity possible. So like, why donate your money to an art museum when you can donate your money to like buy mosquito nets to protect people from malaria and save lives? Donate money to your local food bank instead of donating canned goods, because food banks get crazy discounts when they buy food, so they can do a lot more with your money than you can, and that's more effective. See? Okay. Charity should be research-based and effective. I agree with that. And I have no doubt that many of the people who are interested in effective altruism also just want to do the best they can with the money that they're donating. However, the internet is a very bad, horrible place where people can start with a perfectly good idea and through completely unproductive online philosophizing can turn it into something shit. And you suddenly start getting stuff like, why donate any money to your local food bank even though there's a cost of living crisis right now and more people are relying on food banks than ever before, when you can invest that money in crypto? bro, and make more money, and then that money can be used more effectively in the future. It's fine, actually, that tech oligarchs are hoarding billions of dollars while average Americans are starving, because the tech billionaires, they're like gonna make the sci-fi future. And like, think about all of the way more people that are going to be alive in the future living in like space colonies or even simulations. Think about all the simulation people in the future. That's like way more people than are toiling in Amazon factories today. So like mathematically, I'm not even making this shit. I'm not making this shit up to make fun of them. I promise you, I'm not making this shit up to make fun of them. This is real shit that I've had to read. It's called long-termism, by the way. Google that if you ever want brain worms. A lot of people who are into rationalism revere the tech billionaires and assume that they must be the richest because they're the smartest and most rational and most deserving. And the future they're creating is going to be totally amazing. Honestly, one of the most jarring things for me about delving into online rationalism, this subculture which talks a lot about wanting to do good, was its acceptance, nay, even celebration of these structures that are so obviously anti-human good. It just serves as my 5 billionth reminder that like no ideology, no idea is good. It's always going to depend on the quality of the human being doing the interpreting. So in conclusion, Eleazar had the opportunity to do a cult. He had the opportunity to do a cult with rationalism, but he didn't do the cult. Yay. And then somebody else totally did. The rationalist subculture birthed a cult which the media has been calling the Zizians. It's worth noting they don't call themselves the Zizians, but they follow a leader who goes by the name Ziz. So, Zizians. Ziz and some of the members were arrested actually just a few weeks ago now, and connected with 6 murders across the US. They did 6 murders. One of the first times they were in the news was 2019, when they showed up outside of a CFAR meetup in Guy Fawkes masks. So they're under the rationalist umbrella, but they reject the mainstream rationalism. They're like on the fringes of the fringes. Ziz's rationalism journey is very long and complicated, and this video is not dedicated to her. This is just like a really unfortunate epilogue. But originally, I will say she was a Yudkowski fan. She donated to Miri. She read all of Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. In one blog post, she cited it as being important to her development as a rationalist, specifically her idea of the hero, the protagonist, the only person capable of truly thinking, the implications of which are really fucked up. And that's how you end up doing murder. It's been like a week, and I'm still thinking about this. So like the Zizians, they killed their landlord, right? Because they didn't want to pay him anymore. They killed a border patrol officer that pulled them over. They allegedly, this one is still alleged, they allegedly killed the parents of one of the members because they wanted her to inherit their money and put it towards the cause. They just crossed a line one day and started murdering people who inconvenienced them in sometimes very minor ways. Like they just thought murder was okay. And I will say, most people who dabble in online rationalism are fine. Most people in the rationalism Reddit or whatever probably don't think murder is fine. But when you have ideas, like, some people are useless NPCs. Your value is determined only by your intelligence and your output of important work. I am more important than other people because I think big thoughts about the evil AI future. It is very easy when you go down that hole to start making arguments for the worthlessness of other human lives, or even your own life. Most of the scandals that have plagued the rationalist subculture before the Zizians, most of those scandals were, well, okay, some of them were sexual assaults, which, wow, this is a group of people that doesn't respect women? Whoa. Whoa, couldn't have called that one. But most were suicide cases. There's a subset of rationalists who become very preoccupied with whether their own lives truly mean anything, you know, mathematically, scientifically, rationally, or whatever, and that's just never going to go well for you. I would like to stress that a very important line was crossed when Ziz started inviting her followers to live with her, because that's when the situation gets really isolating and intense and becomes a cult that thinks murder is okay. But I'm sitting here thinking about it as this video needs to go up literally today, and I'm like, it makes sense. That's it. That's the through line from Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality all the way through the Zizians committing actual murders. It's the devaluation of human life. That's it. It's all rotted. It's all been rotted from the Harry Potter fanfiction all the way to the real cult. Before she was protesting them, she attended CFAR meetings. A lot of them, actually. But they didn't work. They didn't work. And she turned against CFAR and Yudkowski and began amassing followers for her own even more niche belief system, with her, of course, as the infallible hero leader. So there you go. In 2010, Yudkowski started writing a version of Harry Potter that he saw as the ideal rationalist hero savior who everyone should aspire to live their lives like. And someone did it, and she killed 6 people. Well, more accurately, her followers did because she told them to. And that's my horrible video for you. To be honest, I'm not totally sure how to conclude that. Like, the end? Sorry. Sorry I told you that. The end. Thank you for watching Strange. If you haven't watched my last video where I made a cake for my cat, I think you should watch me make a cake for my cat after this. Remember my cat? Hi, baby. He's great. I think you should watch a video about him.